Okay, we're in DAF Chaf Aleph and Mad Aleph. We're going to finish the first parak today. Yesterday we were talking about the case of the wine press, where you have a barrel of truma that bursts. It's tohar truma. If you don't stop it, it's going to imminently flow into the pit, which has tamei chulin in it. And we saw a machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua as to what you're allowed to do. According to Rabbi Eliezer, you're not, if the only kli that you have available to stop the flow of the truma wine down into the pit is a tamei vessel, you're not allowed to be metame biyadayim. You're not allowed to actively be metame the truma. Rabbi Yehoshua disagrees, because since you're talking about a hefset, you're talking about a financial loss, because if the truma wine flows down into the chulin, you're going to lose everything. You're going to lose not only the truma wine, but you're going to lose the chulin down in the pit below. That we therefore can justify allowing you to be matame the truma biyadayim, to actively be matame the truma. Now we're going to qualify this further. Amar Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Chanina, the very first line. Machlokes shenaflu lepachos mimeya sachulin temein. He says there's only a machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua in a situation where the ratio between the chulin wine that's tamei down below and the tohar truma wine that's up above is less than 100-to-1 ratio, meaning that in order to declare bittul, in order for the truma wine to be bottle in the chulin wine, you need a ratio of 100-to-1. That's the amount that you need in order for the chulin to be mevatel the truma, such that even if the truma wine fell into the chulin wine, it would be bottle and it would be permitted, at least for a Yisrael whose tamei would be allowed to drink it, because it would have a din of being all chulin, tamei chulin wine, because the truma would be bottle in it. So that's why there's a machlokus, because you don't have an acceptable ratio of bittul. Avol naflu lameya chulin tamei and divrei hakol tered utetame v'al yatame ena biyad. But if a ratio of that, which means that there's such a small amount of truma wine in proportion to the chulin wine, that you have 100-to-1, then everyone, even Rabbi Yehoshua, would agree that we don't allow you to actively be metame the truma by putting an obstacle of a tamei kli in front of it to stop its flow. Basically, even Rabbi Yehoshua would say, look, you're not going to have a financial loss of the chulin wine because the truma will be bottle in it. Yisrael will be able to drink it, so what's the problem? And therefore, everyone would agree that in that scenario, you're not allowed to actively be metame the truma wine with a tamei kli. Tanya nami hachi, we have a brisa to support this. Chavis shenishbara begaso elyona v'tachteha meya chulin temein. That if you, the brisa states as follows, that if you have a barrel of wine that bursts in the upper part of the vat, the press, and beneath it there's 100 times that amount of chulin that's tamei in the pit. Moda Rabbi Eliezer le Rabbi Yehoshua. Rabbi Eliezer agrees to Rabbi Yehoshua. Shim yachol lahatzl mimenu revius b'tahara yatzil. That if you're able to get a tohar kli in order to stop the wine from flowing, and you're allowed to save a revius of wine, of at least a revius of wine of the tohar truma, and preserve it, then that's what you should do. V'im lav teiredu tetame val yatame ena biyad. But if not, then you should allow everything to flow in, but you should not actively be matami. There, both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua agree. So the Gemara just asks on the language of the brisa. There's something backwards here in the brisa. Hi, Moda Rabbi Eliezer le Rabbi Yehoshua, question mark. Moda Rabbi Yehoshua le Rabbi Eliezer mi boile, exclamation point. The question that the Gemara is asking is as follows. The language of the brisa says that when you have 100-to-1 ratio, Rabbi Eliezer agrees to Rabbi Yehoshua that you cannot use a tamei kli to be matame the truma wine. But that's just the opposite. Rabbi Eliezer is the machmir, and Rabbi Yehoshua is the mekel. So it should be Rabbi Yehoshua agrees to Rabbi Eliezer that you have to be machmir and not be matame the truma with a tamei kli. That's the way the brisa should have read, and we saw a similar problem yesterday in the language of the brisa. Amar Rava epoch. So Rava said very simply, switch the brisa around. Obviously, there's an erroneous girsa in the brisa. Just switch it, and instead of it reading Rabbi Eliezer agrees to Rabbi Yehoshua, it should read Rabbi Yehoshua agrees to Rabbi Eliezer.
Is this to correct a mistake, or is this arbitrary?
Well, what do you mean by arbitrary?
Like he says, reverse the names in the brisa. So is there an error in the brisa?
There's an error in the brisa. We now realize we're talking about an oral transmission. A student got up and recited the brisa in front of Rava. And Rava said, there's some text that you got wrong. You recited it incorrectly.
Okay. All right.
Okay? And Rav Huna bereder Rav Yoshua Omar la'olam lo tepo chacha b'mayaskinon b'chli shetocho tohor v'gabo tome. That no, he says Rav Huna says you don't have to reverse. The brisa is accurate. It's Rabbi Eliezer agreeing to Rabbi Yehoshua, not in the second part of the brisa where it says that you're not allowed to be metame the truma proactively, but rather in the first part of the brisa that if you can save a revius using a tohar kli, then you should do so. Now, what type of tohar kli are we dealing with? So you thought all tohar klis are the same. No, there's a type of tohar kli which is questionable in nature because only the inside of the kli is tohar and the outside of the kli is tameh. So now, this is an unusual kind of situation. Midioraisa, you never have such a thing, that a part of a kli is tameh and a part of a kli is tohar. This is a din d'Rabbanan. That when you're dealing with a tumah d'Rabbanan of mashkin, we said that mashkin can be metame a kli d'Rabbanan. But the rabbis wanted to make a distinction to remind us that it's only a tumah d'Rabbanan. So they said that mashkin that touches a kli from the outside is only metame the outside of the kli, but not the inside of the kli. So this is what we're talking about, where we could say that you could save some of the wine from the top by using a kli whose outside is tameh, inside is tohar, and you can use that to catch the wine that's dripping from the barrel. So comes along Rabbi Eliezer and says, even though the outside of the kli is tameh, I agree that you can use this kli to save the truma. Mahu detema nigzor dilma naga behu betruma kamash malan. You might have thought that no, Rabbi Eliezer would feel no, you can't use such a kli because maybe some of the wine will touch the outside of the kli, and thereby you're proactively being metame the truma. Kamash malan, that Rabbi Eliezer is not concerned about that, and that's why it's really a kula. It's this leniency that Rabbi Eliezer will agree to Rabbi Yehoshua that this is permissible. Hadron alach orle arba asar Bezras Hashem will come back to you. I just saw an article online about the abstract thought of the first chapter of PESACHIM, but haven't had a chance to read it yet. But obviously, there's a lot of interesting stuff in the first parak. Let's go weiter. Now we're continuing along the discussion of Pesach. We're still on Erev Pesach, and we're talking about getting rid of your chametz. So kol sha'a shemuter le'echol machil lebehema l'chayi la'ofos u'mocher l'nachru yemuter bahana asa. The Mishnah says that as long as it is permitted to eat chametz on Erev Pesach, you can feed to your animals as well, and you can feed, and it tells you, behema, chaya, and ofos. It breaks it down. You can feed your domesticated animals, you can feed your animals of the wild, like mice and weasels that are running in and around, in and out of your house, and you can feed birds as well. Now, of course, that's problematic. Like, why would the Mishnah have to explicate each kind of animal? So we'll talk about that. Umocher l'nachu, you're allowed to also sell it to a non-Jew during the time that you're allowed to eat the chametz. Umutter bahana ason, you're allowed to get all benefit from it. This sounds a little bit redundant, wouldn't you say? And once I know that it's mutter bahana, just tell me it's mutter bahana in fartik. So avar zmano asr bahana asa, but once the time elapses of eating it, you're not allowed to get any hana from it. Velo yasik bo tanur v'kiram, nor are you allowed to use it to fuel your oven. Also redundant. If you tell me I can't get hana, then obviously I can't fuel my oven with it. Now we go on to the next subject of the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ein bir chametz el esreifa. We saw this before. Rabbi Yehuda says the only way to properly, halachically dispose of the chametz is by burning it. V'chachamim omrim af mefarer v'zoreh l'ruach omatu l'yam. And the chachamim say no. You also have the option of breaking it down into small pieces and then either throwing it into the wind or into the ocean. That's also a viable method of disposal.
Aren't you feeding the fish?
So the fish don't have a mitzvah of not eating chametz on Pesach. They're not your fish. They're not. Yeah, it would be a Jewish fish, right? Right, a nice carp. Anyway, the Gemara says
you have a fish pond, in your backyard.
So that's a problem because your animals are getting hana. So it can't be your fish. You're throwing it into the ocean.
Yeah, but the Mishnah said he can't feed a chayas, which is not yours either.
But you are benefiting from it because you're using this as a way of getting nutrition to the animal that you want to feed. That by definition is a benefit. If my intention is to feed an animal, then I'm getting benefit from it.
We always feed our mice.
Kol sha'a shemuter lechol machil. So the Gemara says, okay, let's look at the first line. As long as you're allowed to eat, you feed to your animal. Ha kol sha'a she'eno muter lechol eno machel. So by that first line alone, you can infer that as long as when I'm not allowed to eat anymore, I'm not allowed to get hana. So this, of course, was a subject of a machlokus that we'd already discussed in the first parak. Lema masnisin deloka Rabbi Yehuda, di Rabbi Yehuda ha'ika chamesh de'eno ochel uma'achil. This Mishnah must not be like Rabbi Yehuda, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, there's a period on Erev Pesach where you're not allowed to eat, but you are allowed to get hana, which is what we call the fifth hour. Remember, Ditnan Rabbi Meir Omer Ochlin Kol Chamesh V'Sorfen B'Tchila Sheish, that it's a machlokas. Rabbi Meir says, someone will please open Benny's Gemara, as it says in the Mishnah that Rabbi Meir says that for the entire fifth hour, you're allowed to eat chametz, let's say like from 10 to 11 in our clocks, and at the beginning of the sixth hour, like from 11 o'clock, that's when you have to burn the chametz. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Ochlin Kol Arba V'Tolin Kol Chamesh V'Sorfen B'Tchila Sheish, and Rabbi Yehuda disagrees, and he says no, you can eat only during the entire fourth hour, which is like from 9 to 10, and then you're not allowed to eat anymore from 10 to 11, but you have to leave it, which means that you can get benefit from it, and only at the beginning of the sixth hour at 11 o'clock do you have to burn it. So the Gemara says, you see from here that our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Yehuda, which seems to be pretty compelling, right? Because our Mishnah links the Isser Achila to the Isser Hana, and that's not Rabbi Yehuda. The Elamai, Rabbi Meir he. So the alternative is that it goes like Rabbi Meir, who says that the Zman Achila, the time of eating, and the time of Hana'ah are synchronized. But the Gemara says, but wait a minute, let's look at the language. And we saw this question before, the Gemara had said this before. Hai kol sha'a shemuter lechol ma'achil, kol sha'a sha'oichel ma'achil mi boile. Then the language of the Mishnah is asymmetric. What do I mean? If you take a look at the language of the Mishnah, it says, as long as it is permitted to eat, you feed your animals. It should have said one of two things. It should have said either, as long as you're permitted, the word mutter, that you're permitted to eat, you're permitted to feed, or it should have said, as long as you eat, you feed. But why does it use an asymmetric language of, as long as you're mutter to eat, you feed? The implication, explains Rashi, is that we're talking about two parties. The way you read it is like this: as long as he, number one, is permitted to eat, then he, number two, which is the reason for the asymmetry, because we're talking about a different person, feeds his animal. So how does this translate? So Amar Rabba Bar Ula Masnisan Rabban Gamliel. Therefore, we must deduce that our Mishnah is according to Rabban Gamliel, who states as follows: D'Tanan Rabban Gamliel Omer Chulin Ne'echolin Kol Arba Truma Kol Chamesh V'Sorfen B'Tchila Sheish. Rabban Gamliel has a unique shita. He says that you're allowed to eat chulin during the entire fourth hour. During the fifth hour, you can no longer eat chulin, but if you're a kohen, you can eat truma. And at the beginning of the sixth hour, you have to burn. So Rabban Gamliel bifurcates the eating, and it says all of Israel can eat during the fourth hour, and only kohanim can eat truma during the fifth hour. And therefore, you read the Mishnah as follows: V'hachi kamer kol shah shemuter lechol kohen betruma yisrael machil chulin lebeim lechaya laofos. That what it means is that as long as he, number one, which is the kohen, as long as he, the kohen, is permitted to eat truma, then he, the Yisrael, is allowed to feed to his animals and get benefit from the chametz. Okay, so that's the way we conclude. Now, if you recall, we had a discussion like this a little bit yesterday. The Gemara had suggested that Rabban Gamliel is the machriya. He's the middle position between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara had rejected that because Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda had never suggested any distinction whatsoever between chulin and truma. So therefore, Rabban Gamliel cannot be a machriya. He's just the third opinion that's out there. Okay. Anyway, clearly we don't paskin like Rav Meir and we don't paskin like this Mishnah, because we hold that the Zman Achila and the Zman Hana'ah are two different times. The way we paskin is you're allowed to eat chametz up until a certain time, and you're allowed to benefit from chametz up until the following hour. That's why we have a Zman of Achila, and then we have a Zman of beer, right? Anyway, Lama li lamisna, but I guess, of course, I don't know how we paskin as far as truma is concerned, because we don't have truma tahora bisman hazeh, so I shouldn't say that we don't for sure paskin like the Mishnah. If you say that a Mishnah is like Rabbi Gamliel, it's conceivable that we do paskin like the Mishnah. Lama li lamisna behema, lama li lamisna chaya. So now the Gemara says, okay, next topic. Why does the Mishnah have to explicate behema, chaya, and oaf? Why not just say animals, period? So the Gemara says, Shrich, I'll tell you why. The itana behema, the imeshayira chazila, aval chaya the imeshayira kamatzna Allah emalo. If the Mishnah had only said that I'm allowed to feed my behemoths, that's because, maybe it's only because when you feed a behema, a cow, a goat, a sheep, they don't hide their food. You pour the food in a trough, and when they're done eating, the food is left where it is. By a chaya, you have a weasel, maybe even a cat or a dog, which are like wild animals, right? You give them food, and when they don't want to eat anymore, what do? They bury their food. They hide their food in a wall, in a hole in the wall. So maybe you would have argued that you're not allowed to feed chayas because they may end up taking the chametz and hiding it, and you won't be able to find it. So maybe in that 5th hour, maybe you wouldn't be allowed to feed them. So therefore, that's why it had to say chaya. V'itana chaya, and if it only would have said chaya, I would not be able to necessarily infer behema. Why? De'i mishayra mihas mitzana. Aval behema zinin de mishayra v'lo masik adaiti v'koyle beval yira bal yimatze emalo tzricha. That the advantage that you have by a chaya is that, let's say the animal leaves over some of its food after you feed it. At least the animal will have the decency to hide the chametz, so that in the event that I forget that I fed the animal and I got to clean up after it, at least I won't be over on Bal Yirah and Bal Yimatza about finding and seeing the chametz over Pesach in the event that I forgot to be mevatel it. But with an animal, with a behema, with my sheep, if I put the chametz feed in its trough, I may totally forget about it. And then I'll come back a day later and it's Pesach, and all of a sudden I'll encounter the chametz right there out in the open in front of me. So therefore there's an advantage perhaps that a chaya has over a behema, and therefore you need to write both. You need to write behema and you need to write chaya. So now the Gemara says, oifas lamali. Okay, fine, I understand why you have to write behema chaya. Why'd you have to write birds as well? I did a tana behema v'chaya, tani nami ofos. The Gemara answers for stylistic reasons. Once you're listing chayas and behemas, you might as well be comprehensive and write oifus as well, because that's usually the triplet that goes together when you want to talk about all different kinds of animals. And Bob, what would you say that answer is for what?
The birds.
Okay, good. I thought Bob was going to say it, but thank you, Mark. Okay.
I was thinking about the reptiles that were left.
A reptile probably qualifies as a chaya.
What
Okay.
word includes all these animals?
What's that?
Is there a word that includes behemoths?
Sometimes the word behema is all-inclusive. Sometimes it's all-inclusive. And sometimes when the Gemara specifies, then you see that the word behema is specifically referring to, because like the Torah says kol behema, and it's in certain places in the Torah when it talks about kol behema, it's referring to both behemas and chayas, like by the laws of simanim, the simanim of tahara, the signs of purity, where split hooves and chews its cud. The word behema over there, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, refers to chayas and behemas, because deer are included as well. Yeah.
Trying to understand, why does the Torah want to make a distinction between the 4th hour and the 5th hour at all?
No, these are all rabbinic. This is all rabbinic.
It's rabbinic, but
only from chatzos and onwards, midiyaraisa is chametz aser, both in achila and hana.
okay, so why do the rabbinic want to make?
These are safeguards that the chachamim placed upon us to prevent us from encountering chametz after chatzos.
So why don't they just say you can't? If they want to safeguard, why don't they just say nobody? It should be like Rameir, and then it should,
So you say there should be no distinction between.
Right.
Okay, so you subscribe to Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that there's a greater danger of eating than there is of being hanehane, because when you eat chametz, you get kares. When you benefit from chametz, you don't get kares. You just violate a mitzvah slosase. Okay.
Gilgal of Rabbi Mary.
Okay. Meir Bergel. Okay. So now the Gemara says umochro lenachri. you're allowed to sell it to a Gentile. So pshita. So the Gemara says, look, once you've given me the understanding that I'm allowed to benefit from it, why did you have to explicate that I can sell it to a non-Jew? The Gemara says, la'afuke mehai tana, to exclude the following tana. The Tanya beishamai omrim lo yimkar adam chemsa l'nachri ela imken yodea bo sheich l'koydem pesach. Beishamai has a unique shita. They say that even selling your chametz to a goy on Erev Pesach in the morning is forbidden, because they require that not only do you have to physically remove it from ownership, you have to actually physically destroy it. It can no longer exist in the world if it was once yours. Now imagine if we had to observe Pesach like Beis Shammai. You couldn't sell your chametz to a goy anymore, right? According to Beis Shammai, because as long as it's physically in existence, it doesn't work. So that's really why our Mishnah tells me that you're allowed to sell it to a non-Jew, because to tell me that we don't paskin like Beis Shammai. Ubeis Hillel omrim kol sha'a shemuter lechol muter limkor. And Beis Hillel say no. As long as I'm allowed to eat it, I'm allowed to sell it. And of course, it seems like Beis Hillel is going like Rabbi Meir, who says that the time of Achil and time of Hana is the same. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Omer, and Rashi, it's a machlokas Rashi and Tosfos, but Rashi at least says that Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira is subscribing to the school of Beis Shammai. And that's why we have to reckon with it, because we see other Tanoim that paskin like Beis Shammai. He says, Kutach, v'chol minei kutach, asur limkar shloshim yom koydem lepesach. He says, our delicious friend, the kutach, which is the moldy bread and sour milk dip, which people use, they keep it in storage for an extended period of time. It gets better with age, right? And so they said that you're not allowed to sell it to a Gentile within 30 days of Pesach, because it's used like a salad dressing long term. And as such, you have to make sure that you sell it at least 30 days, with the assumption that by 30 days it'll get used up before Pesach. It's the same idea, that you have to make sure that any chametz that was once in your possession has to be consumed or removed from the world before Pesach. Why 30 days? Because there's a reasonable assumption. That's why the rabbis ordained that you start learning the laws of Pesach 30 days before the Chag, because we assume that as long as you get started 30 days in advance, you can get rid of all the chametz and take care of all of the problems that chametz presents for Pesach. Okay, and that's when the obligation begins of getting rid of your chametz. Okay, the next thing the Mishnah said is umuter bahana, that you're allowed to benefit from the chametz, but that too should be self-evident by the time you told me that I can feed it to my animals and I can sell it to a Gentile. Pshita lo tzricha shecharcho kodem zmano. The answer is that we're talking about chametz that you burnt completely before the zman of Isser. And v'kamash malan kederabba the Amar Rabba charcho kodem zmano muter bahana afilu la'achar zmano. The Rabba tells us that if I completely carbonize my chametz, I take a roll of bread and I completely burn it, so it's a lump of coal now, I'm allowed to benefit from it even on Pesach itself. It doesn't have the status of chametz anymore, because it's totally carbonized. It's an ash now. It's not, or coal. It's not considered to be the original chametz. So, like say in theory, if I wanted to use it as like to fertilize my lawn, I could do so even on Pesach itself. And that's the chiddush. The chiddush is I'm allowed to get benefit from carbonized chametz even after chatzos hayom. So avar zmano aser bahana aser. Then the Mishnah said also something that should be obvious by now, that if the time has elapsed when I'm no longer allowed to eat it, then I'm not allowed to get hana from it. So the Gemara now says pshita. That's inferred already from the first line of the Mishnah. Why'd you have to say it? So lo tzricha l'sha'os derabanan. It's coming to tell me that the iser hana'a, even during the time when it's only aser midirabanan, that is the hour before chatzos, is absolute. This Isser Hana'a, so much to the point where this Isser Hana'a renders any possession of mine no longer my possession. The Amar Rav Gidol, Amar Rav Chia Bar Yosef, Amar Rav Yechanan, HaMakadesh Mishei Shos Ulamayla, Afilu Bechite Kur Dinaisa in Choshishin Likidushin. As Rabbi Yochanan had taught, that if I try to marry a woman by presenting her with an object of value that is made from chametz, and I do it in the 6th hour, where my chametz is only rabbinically prohibited, nevertheless, there's no kiddushin at all. Now, you might have argued that since this object is not aser bahana midioraisa, it's only aser midirabanan, then at least l'chumra, the kiddushin should be a valid kiddushin, and she should need a get if she wants to go marry somebody else. comes along the Mishnah and tells me that no, this is what the line of the Mishnah is teaching me, that this thing is completely not mine at all, because the Chachamim not only have the power to prohibit chametz for me, but they also have the power to say that it is no longer yours halachically because you cannot get hana from it. So much so that the Chachamim say hefker based in hefker. They say it's mamish not yours, to the point where you can't even use it as a financial instrument. So even, and because we also say kol de mekadesh adayik to derabbanan mekadesh. Anytime a person gets married, he does it with the consent of the Chachamim. If the Chachamim say that this is not a financial instrument anymore because it's asur b'hana, then there's no kiddushin bichlal. Okay, v'lo yasik bo tanur v'kirayim. A person cannot use it to fuel his oven. That too is obvious by now. So the Gemara says pshita lo tzricha. The answer is elo Rabbi Yehuda. We need it for Rabbi Yehuda, who is the next halach in our Mishnah. The Amar ein bir chametz el esreifa. Rabbi Yehuda says that the laws of bir chametz, that the requirement of disposal of your chametz can only be done through burning. I might have thought that since Rabbi Yehuda says that the mitzvah of disposal of chametz is through burning, you might have argued, okay, I'm burning my chametz at the beginning of the 6th hour, I'm fulfilling the mitzvah of disposal of chametz. So why can't maybe I should be permitted to benefit from the disposal of my chametz while I'm disposing of it. I'm doing the mitzvah, so let me at least benefit from it at that moment, right? And therefore, when I'm burning my chametz, let me cook a soup on top of it while it's burning as a fuel. So kamash malan, that therefore that comes along the Mishnah to tell me that even when you're in the midst of doing the mitzvah of disposal, since it's the zman of Isser Hana, you're not allowed to be nana even at that moment. Amar Chizkiya. Now Chizkiya says the following statement: Minayin l'chametz b'Pesach she'aser b'hana. How do you know? In other words, what's the source text to tell me that not only may I not eat chametz on Pesach, but I may not be neheneh from chametz on Pesach? That's the whole premise of our whole discussion. Shenamar lo ye'achel chametz, and the basis is because the Torah says in a very strange conjugation, chametz may not be eaten. The Torah does not say, at least not in this pasuk, thou shalt not eat chametz. Right? It does say it in another pasuk, but in this particular pasuk it says chametz may not be eaten in the passive conjugation. So why is it written in the passive conjugation? It's to teach me that lo yehebo heter achilat, that the subject is chametz, and no eating may be attached to this chametz, which means I cannot use the chametz as a tool to acquire food for myself. Right, as an instrument to acquire food for myself. So that teaches me that even if I want to use the chametz as a bartering tool to be able to buy matzah balls, I'm not allowed to do that. That teaches me that I'm not allowed to get hana'ah from chametz as much as I'm not allowed to eat chametz. I hope that's clear. Is that clear to everybody?
Isn't it a bit of a jump, though, between something that, I mean, for instance, if I'm going to fertilize my lawn, you're saying that I'll save money from other fertilizer, and that will money that I could use.
Yeah, that's a distinct benefit.
Somehow you're going to, when you get any hana,
yeah,
you somehow could use that for indirectly to get money, so you could buy.
When we say every hana'ah that we deal with has financial value, it has some value that you could attach to it, because you would always say, I would pay X amount of money to be able to get that done, to be able to get that benefit.
All hana is financial, ultimately.
Yeah.
Isn't there also something like by Shabbos, if you move the chair, but you're not doing it for a certain, like Rav Shimon, the
Davar she'eino niskavein. No, but that's irrelevant. It's irrelevant as long as you're getting hana'ah. At least it seems to be irrelevant for this discussion. You're talking about burning while I'm burning the chametz, cooking a soup, but that's a davar shemiskaven. Your intention is clearly to get benefit from it. Your question is, can I get benefit? What if I'm getting indirect benefit, or benefit that I wasn't intending? Maybe that's something that we'll discuss later on, but it's not part of our discussion today. Anyway, the Gemara now says, "Taima de kasav rachmana lo ye'achel chametz, halo kasav lo ye'achel havamina iser achilo mashma iser hana lo mashma." The Gemara says that according to Chizkiya, it was necessary for the Torah to conjugate the verb of eating in an unusual way in order to convey this idea. Because if the Torah would have just written, thou shalt not eat chametz, I would have inferred only that there's a prohibition of eating, but not a prohibition of hana. But upliga de Rabbi Avohu. But that in itself disagrees with another Amora, Rabbi Avohu, because Rabbi Avohu was of the opinion that any time the Torah says, thou shalt not eat, it means automatically thou shalt not benefit. Okay? The Amar Rebbe Yavahu kol makom shneamar lo ye'achel lo socha lo sochlu echad isir achila v'echad isir hana b'mashma ad sheyafarit lecha akasav kederech sheparit lecha b'nevela. That any time the Torah says thou shalt not eat in any conjugation, the implication is not only thou shalt not eat, but also thou shalt not benefit. Until what? Until the Torah explicitly tells you otherwise, that you are allowed to benefit, as it does by Nevela. Now, what's the pasuk by Nevela? The Torah tells me in Parshas Re'eh that you're not allowed to eat carrion, Nevela, but rather what should you do with it? Sell it or give it away to a non-Jew. So there, the Torah specifically tells you that you are allowed to benefit from it, and that's why it's the exception to the rule. But in all other places where the Torah says don't eat it, it means you may not benefit as well. So the Tanya, here's the brisa that goes through this whole sugya. Lo sochlu kol nevela lager asher bisharecha titenena va'achala o machor lenachri v'goymer. The Torah says you shall not eat nevela, but rather what must you do with it? To the ger toshav. The word ger over here does not mean a convert, it means a ger toshav, a righteous Gentile who observes shiva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. There is a mitzvah to support him financially, there is a mitzvah to make him part of your community and make sure that he is financially viable. All right? That is in contradistinction to an idolater who lives with you. There's no mitzvah of sustaining him. So the Torah says as follows: you shall not eat nevela, but rather what? To the ger toshav who lives with you, you shall give it to him, and he shall eat it. Or o machor lenachri, or sell it to a nachri, which is an idolater. Ainli elo lager b'nesina ulenachri b'mechira. Then the brisa continues and it says, let's analyze this. The pasuk seems to imply that I can either give it to a ger toshav or sell it to a nachri. Lager b'mechira minayin. How do I know that if I want to, I can also sell it to a ger toshav? Let's say I want to make a buck. The ger toshav is not a poor guy, but he's a man of means, and I want to sell it to him because I can't eat it myself. Am I allowed to do that? Talmud Lomar, yes. Lager asher bisharecha titenena o machor. So the way that the Gemara analyzes the pasuk is because the pasuk writes the two verbs adjacent to each other. It reads as follows in English: to the ger toshav who is in your gates, you shall give it, or sell it to a nachri. So the fact that there's an asymmetry in the verse, and the first part puts the subject before the verb, and the second part puts the verb before the subject, tells me that the two verbs are meant to be attached to each other. It can apply both to the first subject and to the second subject. So therefore, the way you read it is, to the ger toshav that is in your gates, you shall give it or sell it. Even though the comma really is dividing between giving it to the ger toshav or sell it to the nachri. Now, lenachri b'nesina minayin, in a similar vein, how do you know that you're allowed to give it as a gift to the idolater? If you want to, Talmud Lomar titenena va'achala o machor lenachri. Again, you shift the comma and you take the two verbs of either giving it or selling it and attach them both to the second subject, which is the nachri. Nimseis omer, it turns out that you can say echad ger ve'echad nachri bein b'mechira bein b'nesina divrei Reb Meir. So Reb Meir is of the opinion that you have the option of either giving it or selling it to the ger toshav, or giving it or selling it to the nachri. You can do any one of those options. Rabbi Yehuda omer dvarim kichsavan. Rabbi Yehuda says, I disagree. The Torah is meant to be taken literally that what? Lager b'nesina ulenachri b'mechur. You may either only give it as a gift to the ger toshav or sell it to the nachri. You cannot mix and match. My time at the Rabbi Yehuda. So the question is, why is Rabbi Yehuda so rigid in his interpretation? Isal kadaitach kid amar Rabbi Meir. So maybe the Rabbi Yehuda will tell you, because if Rabbi Meir is correct, that the two verbs are attached to each other, and therefore they can apply to either the first subject or the second subject. Lichtov Rachman lager asher bisharecha titenena va'achala umachor. O lamali shma mina lidivorim kichsavan. The Rabbi Yehuda tells you like this: you can't put the two verbs together to apply to either the ger toshav or to the nachri, because the Torah divides the two verbs with the word o, which means or. Either or. You can't have both. So therefore, the Torah says you can either give it to the ger toshav or you can sell it to the nachri. But the word o divides the two verbs to disallow you from connecting the two verbs to either subject. The Rabbi Meir o lahaktim nesina deger lemechira denachri, and Rabbi Meir says no. I disagree that o is a solid wall between the two verbs. All it tells you is that when you have an option of doing one or the other, there's an issue of prioritization. Which one is the most preferred? You have an option of either giving it as a gift to the ger toshav or selling it to the nachri. Which one is preferred? It's preferred, since you have a mitzvah of supporting the ger toshav, of giving him tzedakah. If he needs it, it's preferred to give the tzedakah to the ger toshav than instead of selling it to the nachri. That's why the word o is dividing. But it's not a solid division. Really, both verbs apply to both parties. But the word o is there to tell you that if you have the option of doing either or, and there's no compelling reason for one over the other, better that you should give it as a gift to the ger toshav. Now, by the way, I just want to... The whole premise of this whole discussion is the idea that there's something called the ger toshav in your society. What do the Gentiles in Thornhill have the status of? That's a long discussion. But just remember that there are opinions who say that they have a din of an idolater. There are opinions who say that they have a din of a ger toshav. And there are opinions who say that they're neither. But it's a long discussion. I gave a shir about it several months ago. But just realize that it's not automatic that you can just say, well, I don't have to deal with the Gentiles in my community. Even if when they have a din of a nachri, there's still a mitzvah of tzedakah. There's still a mitzvah of darchei shalom, of maintaining the peace. And so my suggestion is that there's way too much insularity in our community, and it's our obligation as a Jewish nation of holy people to reach out to our Gentile neighbors more than we are currently doing. Off my soapbox and weiter. The Rebbe Yehuda.
By the way, the Rebbe agrees with you.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
The Rebbe Yehuda. Now, Rebbe Yehuda will tell you, halo tzarich kra. To tell me that there's a prioritization of first giving to the ger toshav as a gift before you sell it to the nachri, that you don't need a pasuk to teach you. That's not the conveyance of this text. Because kaven de ger atamitzuv l'hachyosav and nachri atamitzuv l'hachyosav lo tzarich kros svarahu. He tells you, look, we already know from previous texts that there's a mitzvah of tzedakah of sustaining the ger toshav. And there's no mitzvah of sustaining the nachri. So obviously, even without this phrase of o, I would know that there's a priority of giving a gift to the ger toshav before you sell it to the nachri. And therefore, this phraseology of dividing the two verbs with the word o is therefore coming to teach me that you can only give a gift to the ger toshav and you can only sell it to the nachri and not vice versa. Now the Gemara says, Bishlam ala Rebbe Meir, the Amar echad ger ve'echad nachri bein b'mechira bein minasina, mid itzrich kra lemishra nevela bahana'a hakol isurin shabatara asurin bein ba'achila bein bahana'a. Now let's go back to Rabbi Avohu's contention. The whole reason we got started on this discussion is because Rabbi Avohu had made a statement. Rabbi Avohu had said, any time the Torah says, thou shalt not eat, it means not only in Isser Achila, but in Isser Hana'ah. And how do I know this? From the pasuk of Nevela, which needs to explicate that it is permitted to get Hana'ah. That teaches me that the fact that the Torah has to explicate that teaches me that anywhere where the Torah does not state it explicitly, there is an Isser Hana'ah. So that works out well according to Reb Meir, because according to Reb Meir, the only reason why the Torah needed to specify it over here that you can get hana from it is to teach me the general principle of kol Torah kula, that anywhere where the Torah says thou shalt not eat, it means thou shalt not benefit as well. However, Elul Rebbe Yehuda da Amar Lidvarm Kichsavim Hu Da'asa HaKol Yisum Shebetorah Minale Da'asurin Ba'ana. But according to Rebbe Yehuda, there's a different purpose as to why the Torah wrote this phrase that you shall give it to the ger toshav or sell it to the nachri. The purpose of the Torah writing that is not superfluous. The purpose of the Torah writing that is to tell me that I'm only allowed to give it away for free to the ger toshav, and I'm only allowed to sell it to the nachri, but not vice versa. That in itself is teaching me something significant that has to do with the halacha of nevela. So where do I see a source text according to Rabbi Avohu, according to the way you're understanding Rabbi Yehuda, where do I see a source text according to Rabbi Yehuda that in Kol Torah Kula, in other places in the Torah, where the Torah just says don't eat, it means an Isser Hana as well. You don't have a source text according to Rabbi Yehuda because he uses that phrase in this pasuk to teach me something about the laws of Nevela itself. The Gemara says, Nafkale milakelev tashlichun osa. Rabbi Yehuda has a different pasuk. It's not a pasuk in Sefer Devarim. It's a pasuk in Sefer Shemos in Parshas Mishpatim. And that pasuk states as follows: that when you have treifa, now there's a difference between nevela and treifa. Nevela is carrion, an animal that dies of natural causes. Treifa is an animal who dies that either it was shechted incorrectly or it was mauled by an animal, but it didn't have proper shechita. There, the Torah says you're not allowed to eat it, but rather give it to a dog. Now it says oso. The word oso is superfluous in that pasuk because it could have just said lakelev tashlichun, throw it to the dogs. But why say throw it to the dogs? And there's with the extra word oso, with the emphasis on oso. Oso atamashlich lekelev via atamashlich lekelev kol isurin shebetor. That's to teach me that only treifa are you allowed to give to your dogs because you're allowed to benefit from treifa, but all other things that you're not allowed to eat, you're not allowed to give it to your dog. Now Rashi tells me that without that extra word oso, if the Torah would have just told me give it to your dogs, I would have learned the following position. I would have learned that there's a Musar vort here. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says dogs deserve to eat your leftovers. You know why? Why does a dog deserve to be rewarded? Because they didn't bark at the time of Makas Becharos, because God wanted to ensure that there was total calm and harmony in the Jewish camp during Makas Becharos, and therefore He told the dogs don't bark, and the dogs listened, and they didn't bark. So Hashem says, I'm going to reward every creature of this world that obeys my desire, and therefore there's a mitzvah to feed your dogs, because dogs are special. Dogs, right? Because they listen to Hashem during Makas Becharos. All of you dog lovers, you now understand why. So if the Torah would not have said oso, that's the only thing that I would have learned from this pasuk. But now that the Torah adds the extra word oso, that tells me this additional halacha according to Rabbi Yehuda, that only here are you allowed to get hana'ah from feeding to your animal. But in Kol Torah Kula, when the Torah says don't eat it, it also means an Isser hana'ah. The Rabbi Meir. So what's Rabbi Meir going to tell you? Why does the Torah have to write the word oso over there? What's the purpose for its addition? Oso atamashlich lekelev v'i atamashlich lekelev chulin shenishchatu ba'azara. Rabbi Meir tells you that pasuk is coming to tell you something else. There's an isser in the Torah that you're not allowed to eat chulin inside the Beis Hamikdash. It's called chulin ba'azara is aser. Now, how do I know that chulin ba'azara is aser? We don't see a specific mitzvah lo saseh that says thou shalt not eat chulin in the azara. All we know is that there's a mitzvah aseh where the Torah says that when you're far away from the temple, you're allowed to eat non-sacrificial meat or chulin meat. But from that, we infer that when you're inside the temple, you're not allowed to eat sacrificial meat. But you see here, the Torah does not phrase it as thou shalt not eat. So without an explicit pasuk that tells me that from the word oso, without that additional word, I wouldn't necessarily know that not only is there a prohibition to eat chulin in the temple, but there's also a prohibition of deriving benefit from chulin in the temple, because there's no place in the Torah which says thou shalt not eat chulin in the temple. So that says, Reb Meir, why you need the word oso, to add to me the information that not only am I not allowed to eat chulin in the temple, but I'm not allowed to benefit from it as well. So, the idach, and what's Rabbi Yehuda going to do with that? Where does Rabbi Yehuda know that you're not allowed to benefit from chulin in the azara? Chulin shenishchatu ba'azara lav deoraisi. He says that's a rabbinic law that you cannot benefit from chulin in the temple. There's no Torah law, and therefore you don't need a pasuk for that. Have a wonderful day.